and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Krystal Ball's interview with RFK Jr. Now, Breaking Points did a whole hour, I believe 45-minute, maybe an hour-long interview with RFK Jr. And as the interview progressed, there was an interesting 10-minute segment in which they talked about the pandemic, the vaccine. Now, I got to be careful with my words here because YouTube likes to screw around here, even though the World Health Organization declared the pandemic of 2020 to be officially over. But anyways, we noticed an interesting hypocrisy with Breaking Points and Krystal Ball trying to, well, smear and not give a chance for RFK Jr. to explain his policies. So again, this is utter hypocrisy because I have some interesting videos that kind of shine a light on really how Krystal Ball and I guess a lot of people currently in quote unquote independent media are kind of propping up Marianne Williamson of all people. And I have to wonder, really, when does the hypocrisy end? The double standards. Now, I want to pull up this tweet here. Huge shout out to Compton J of Revolutionary Blackout Network, who was able to capture a good this entire 10-minute segment. So paying off your Access journalism bills with Krystal Ball. Being anti-vax is worse than funding the Nazis to Marianne Williamson supporters, according to Krystal. It's so obvious that Krystal Ball and Breaking Points brought RFK Jr. on to point out his anti-vax stance in order to pull Democratic voters away from RFK Jr. Now, again, if you have been paying attention, originally it was only Marianne Williamson who was challenging Biden for the nomination. Then comes in RFK Jr., and he gets a huge boost in support and begins to outshine Marianne Williamson. So I want to pull this video up here. And it's very interesting. I'll be letting the video play out in certain segments, and I'll be pausing in to add in my 2 cents here. But again, interviewing 101 is you don't interrupt your guests. And I just found it interesting, too, that with all of this taking place, as this interview is happening, as again, Krystal Ball is going after RFK Jr. and not letting him finish his sentences, it's interesting that this book is in the background, Robert Kennedy and His Times. Again, the best part of the smear interview Kyle's mom did with RFK Jr. was how she had his dad's book prominently displayed behind her while she smeared him. And again, just something interesting to point out. Even, I think really the best part of this tweet is right here. Kyle's mom. Anyways, let's play this video for all you lovely people.
So let me ask you about vaccines. This is an area where you and I have significant differences. And, just to level with you on this, like, a lot of what you say I really respond to. I think you're a very genuine person, but the across the board, whether you want to call it vaccine skepticism or anti-vax advocacy, which has been a central part of what you've been up to for the past number of years. For me personally, it's an issue, and it's a real sort of red line. And I know I'm not alone in that, especially running in a Democratic primary. There are going to be other millions of people like me who have similar concerns. So how do you win them over? What's your message to people who think like I do?
Well, but just tell me where you think I got it wrong.
Now, again, already 43 seconds in the interview, Krystal Ball is putting in her own bias and perspective. Now, look, we're all guilty of it. Hell, I have my own bias and perspectives too. But when I'm interviewing guests on my show, I at least let my guests explain their policies or the things they want to bring up and let them speak to the people. At no point in time, I mean, if there's going to be a back and forth, you need to be at least ready to show whoever you're having on your show, like, okay, well, here's where you're wrong on these issues, and here are the facts backing me up. Again, it's kind of pathetic that Krystal Ball and Breaking Points is going down this route. Now, I'm not going to vote Democrat, but at this point, I mean, this really is a smear job already, 43 seconds in.
Well, I think you get it wrong when you draw a correlation between the rise of things like autism and the introduction of vaccines when there isn't hard scientific evidence tying those things together.
How do you know? Let me ask you this. How do you know there's not a hard scientific evidence?
Well, because the one major study that purported to show that was retracted, and the scientist who conducted it was, was
Now, what you're doing now,
basically
Krystal,
fraudulently created. Listen, I don't.
no.
Hold on.
You're
But
raising
I don't.
this
I
issue.
don't want to get. I don't want to get in a debate with you about this because
But she's the one who instigated the debate. Okay, you're gonna bring this up, and then you're gonna have this guest on your show, and you're not gonna allow them to explain their point. You may not agree with him, Krystal, but you have to let him explain his point. And as soon as you bring up this kind of question and your own personal bias and add in these statements and try and smear him, he has every right to defend his position and the policy issues that he stands by.
because you've spent your life pulling out this study. Now, I will tell you. Let me just tell you.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Let me just tell you.
I'm not.
I've listened to hours of interviews with you with an open mind, and I'm not persuaded. Now, maybe I'm wrong. That's possible. I'll hold it out there.
I'm not persuaded. Again, you're adding in your personal bias. As a reporter, as a commentator, you do have to show neutrality, especially when you're interviewing presidential candidates. And we got some videos that will shine a light on really the utter hypocrisy of Krystal Ball and how times have changed. That's right. We even got a video from way back in time, but more on that later.
There, people can watch. I thought Megyn Kelly did a phenomenal interview with you that went through all these claims piece by piece by piece. I really encourage people to watch that whole exchange because we won't be able to do it justice here in the 5 minutes we have left. But there are going to be people like me who aren't persuaded and who see this as an issue. And the fact that it's been such a central part of your advocacy means I can't just sort of put it to the side and say, oh, well, I'll just ignore, this piece that's been really important to you in your life. So you're running in a Democratic primary. You have a lot of people who feel even more strongly than me who think that, Dr. Fauci is a hero and all of these things.
Let's have democracy in the chat. Do you think Dr. Fauci's a hero? Type 1 for, oh yeah, here's my number one super guy. Type 2 for no. No.
How are you going to persuade them? How are you going to reach them? And what is your message to them?
Well, first of all, I'm not leading with, my opinions about vaccines. What I say to people is show me where I got it wrong. Show me where I got my science wrong. I've written books about this. I wrote a book about the link between thimerosal and autism that has, I think, 450 distilled scientific studies that confirm and validate that hypothesis and 1,400 references. And if I got something wrong, show me where it is.
But I think people have shown you where things are wrong, but you don't want to hear it.
Okay, and then, see, Krystal Ball is being guilty of the exact same thing. He is trying to share his points, his perspectives, and his evidence, as well as his advisors, and she doesn't want to see it. So in other words, she is doing exactly what she is saying that RFK Jr. is not willing to do. However, later on in this interview, RFK Jr. states, and we brought this up on RBN as well, show me the evidence and I could change my mind. Show me and I could educate myself further. Again, notice that Krystal doesn't do that.
Because I've seen, numerous fact checks. Dr. Vinay Prasad, who we, really respect on the COVID vaccine. He went through your interview with All In. He did a fact check. I mean, it's not.
And I did a fact check of Vinay, and you should read that.
I will take a look at it. But I don't think that it's fair to say nobody has ever pointed out anything that's been wrong.
Well, here's what people complain about what I say. And I'm not leading on this issue, so people can either take it or leave it. But if you want to, what you just said about me, that I'm sort of hard-headed and stubborn and just won't give in, you're wrong about that. If somebody shows me where I'm wrong, I'm going to correct it.
And that's a perfect response already 3 minutes in, with all these smears and little slight jabs that Krystal Ball is doing. Show me evidence, show me facts, and I could change my mind. I'm not going to be hard-headed on that. Again, that's a perfect response. And Krystal could have easily left it alone. But she chose to instigate this conversation, saying that it's not a debate. But yet when you have a guest on your show who's running for the nomination in the Democratic Party, and you're not going to allow them to at least explain their position, it's pretty goddamn rude.
And, we have probably the most robust fact-checking operation now in North America. I have 350 PhD scientists and MD physicians on, CHD's advisory board, including until recently, Luc Montagnier won the Nobel Prize for discovering the HIV virus. Chris Portier, who's the head of the National Toxicity Program at NIH, formerly, probably the top toxicologist in America. And if I were saying things that were scientifically unsound, those people would not stay with us. What I would say to you is, show me where I got it wrong. Show me a study where I got wrong, and I will change my position. Science is fluid. It's not an embarrassment to me if there's a new scientific study that I haven't seen that comes out and says I'm wrong. That's what you're supposed to do with science. But what I'm saying to you, nobody has done that. If Vinay Prasad, when he did his piece, if he showed me science that was valid, I would say I would change my position.
If we got the two of you together,
read my response to it.
Oh, poor Sager. He tried to add in his 2 cents, but he was quiet in the background. Like, look at him. He has that face of I don't want to be here. Again, just a little funny moment in here. But again, it's really, really sad to see this hatchet job that Krystal Ball is trying to do towards RFK Jr. Again, a question that we brought up on RBN last night, Compton J was hosting, is do you ever see Krystal Ball doing this towards Marianne Williamson? For those of you who don't know, Marianne Williamson, who is also in the primary race for the Democratic nomination, helped officiate her wedding between Krystal and Kyle. So she was the one who officiated it. So again, conflict of interest. We'll be talking about that later.
So you say this isn't what you're leading with, but I just have to say, as someone who, is watching your candidacy closely and is aware of the advocacy you've been doing and, the organization that you are involved with.
And I want to give a shout out in the live stream chat. Denise Grant states, I'm Krystal and I'm not persuaded. And that is all. Again, she's instigating a semi-debate with RFK Jr.
It's hard for me to believe this won't be an important part of how you govern. So I think that's the most important piece for people to get, who you have to accept there are going to be people like me who just don't agree with you on this. You certainly understand that there are many who do think that the vaccines that we have are more beneficial than harmful, that, got their kids vaccinated and are happy for that decision. So how is this going to impact the way that you govern, or does it not at all?
Now, again, listen to his answer. She's talking about how he's going to govern. Now, listen, when you're an executive, when you're in charge of a nation, city, government, etc., a good leader, listens to his advisors and comes up with the best solution possible to help his people. Now, obviously, it's an ideal situation because obviously the last presidents we've had don't give a damn about the American people except their top corporate donors. But that's a story for another day. But listen to RFK Jr.'s answer in response to, again, Krystal's smear job and hatchet job that she's trying to do to RFK Jr.'s campaign.
I mean, I'm going to govern according to, what evidence-based medicine. That's.
So let me give a specific question. If there's another pandemic, in the last pandemic, former President Trump, something we gave him a lot of credit for, he launched Operation Warp Speed. They had a whole of government approach. They used the mRNA technology that was developed using,
Need some more coffee, Sager? I hear you, man. I feel you. I've had those days where I'm a little burnt out.
U.S. taxpayer dollars to get a vaccine out to the population as quickly as possible. How would your approach have differed?
My approach would have been a science-based approach.
Which means what?
Which means and a medicine-based approach.
Science-based. Come on, Krystal. Science-based. Science-based.
Approach that has been used for, and approved for decades. you look first at therapeutics that are off the shelf, and you look at the efficacy of those. I mean, what I would have done if I was in power then, I would have created an information grid, because now we have this internet that is supposed to benefit us and has become instead an instrument for, totalitarian control. But let's use it for something good. Let's link all 15 million scientists, doctors, frontline physicians all over the world.
Again, I want to give a huge shout out to the audience here. MJ, Anti-Imperialist Party, writes, I don't like that answer, so let me ask another smear question. And Dana Fairbanks writes, this is nothing but a lecture by Krystal Ball. Well said, Dana.
And find out what they're doing to treat this new respiratory virus. And find out what they're saying is working and not working, and then test that with science, and then turn it instantaneously into protocols and recommendations for other scientists.
So would a vaccine development be part of that or no?
Well, I don't think the vaccine worked. I think,
And by the way, just so YouTube knows, NBC recently did a report of how some people who got the vaccine are suffering from tendinitis and other health issues. So again, notice how she brings up the vaccine, and listen again to his answer. He's coming up with a science-based approach, the best possible solution. Now, God forbid we have another pandemic, because look, it won't matter who's sitting in the White House, be it Republican or Democrat, be it Biden, RFK Jr., Trump, Marianne Williamson, or let's say a third-party candidate. Let's be very clear here about what 2020 showed us. This country was not ready for a global pandemic. Nobody was. No institution, no government, no group, nobody, nothing. So if we get another one, and a real one, something that's very devastating to the human species, we are going to get a gut check, the likes of which we have never had before. Because this country, especially the United States, richest country in the world, we don't have affordable health care. We don't have Medicare for all. We're not ready. So it's not going to matter who sits in the White House, because every institution in this country, here in America alone, we are not prepared. Thank you.
If you think it worked, then try to explain to me the countries that were unvaccinated did much better than
many of those countries, because there are a lot of different factors in various countries. So a lot of those countries, as you pointed out before,
why do we have the highest death rate in the world by far?
I think there are a lot of factors that may go into that.
Yeah, such as, again, the highest death rate, Krystal. I mean, again, United States, we don't have Medicare for all, okay? One bad day, an American can lose everything. Medical bankruptcy is something that impacts us all, especially to our international audience. Just so you know, our healthcare is tied to our job. So if we become unemployed or, get laid off, there goes our healthcare. Bye-bye. And again, she keeps on interrupting him, which is absolutely rude.
One of them is the fact that we are disproportionately obese as a society. We have the negative health outcomes that you've been talking about. We don't go outside as much as countries, say, in Africa. I mean,
Africa's a goddamn continent, Krystal. Come on. Geography 101. Africa's not a country. It's a continent. Continent. Country. Two different things all together.
There are a lot of different factors that may play into that. But I will say, did the vaccines work in the way they were initially promised to prevent spread? No, I don't think so, especially once you got to later variants. But we have a lot of data that shows that in terms of reducing severe hospitalization and death, the vaccines were really important. And maybe there was a cost-benefit analysis.
I want to see that data. I know that's what the industry says.
There is lots of data, and not just from here, from around the world, that shows the vaccine doses, and not just our vaccines, but ones that were created.
Okay, why are you adding your personal bias? And again, you're interviewing somebody who's running for president, and you're making this a conversation between you and him, and you're making this interview about you now. All right, this segment of your interview that you guys did, Breaking Points with RFK Jr., you're making it about yourself and your perspective and your bias.
Created all around the world, reduce severe hospitalization and death. So in that way, yes, I do very much believe that they work.
And let me tell you something. What I believe you're doing now is you're parroting what the public health agencies have been saying, but they do not have a scientific basis for that. And I have another book out that you should look at called Died Suddenly, that goes through all the Johns Hopkins data, which is the dashboard data that everybody uses, and shows exactly what happened when first of all, the vaccine, the Case Western study that is probably the largest, most recent, shows that at most the vaccine gives you a very, very small amount of protection, and that after 7 months, you go into negative efficacy. So you are more, if you got vaccinated, you're more likely to get sick. You're more likely to get severe illness, and you're more likely to die than if you were unvaccinated.
I have not seen that. I have seen study after study that shows the opposite.
Okay, and you're not acknowledging what he's trying to bring up. So I'm going to end this video here. But before I do, I want to pull up this tweet here of Kim Iverson calling out breaking points. And I think it's very important. Now, Kim Iverson did her own takedown and breakdown of this interview that Breaking Points did with RFK Jr. Breaking Points, Krystal Ball attacks Robert Kennedy Jr. on his stance about vaccines. And then as soon as he goes to defend himself, she shuts him down, won't let him speak. Says they only have 5 minutes left. Now, again, Krystal, last I checked, you're not on Rising anymore. You're on YouTube. So you don't really have a time crunch, So there you go, unless Kyle needs to be fed. But oops, sorry, hold on. Krystal still hasn't admitted to being completely wrong during the pandemic, nor did she disclose her and her ex-husband's investments in distance learning while advocating for lockdowns. RFK Jr. accused her of parroting, rightly so, while she went on to defend COVID vaccines. Might as well return to MSNBC. So this is interesting because the thing is, there is a bias that Krystal Ball has. And again, Marianne Williamson did help officiate her wedding between Kyle Kulinski and herself. So again, it is interesting. So I want to pull up this video here and tell me that there isn't a bias.
Well, Pete's not running because Pete's a good little bully playing within the Democratic Party and waiting his turn and all that stuff. But why that matters is clearly Democratic voters in New Hampshire are looking for something new. They're looking for somebody new.
Yes.
And the fact that Biden is directly snubbing them, they're probably, sorry guys, the dog is going crazy over here. The fact that Biden is directly snubbing them is, I honestly think Marianne kind of overnight just became a serious contender. Because so the Washington.
Now, this video came out in January, by the way, folks. So just throwing it out here with this.
Post now has given her sort of like an unintended assist,
yes.
Right? New Hampshire clearly is pissed at Biden. And then what happens if 3, 4, 5, 6 other media outlets now jump on this and run with this same narrative?
And they will.
Now, look, eventually, guys, the media is going to turn on Marianne Williamson. As soon as she becomes a real challenger, they're going to turn.
The real challenger currently is RFK Jr. Okay, this isn't up for debate. Now, I'm not going to tell you guys how you should vote. I'm going to vote independent and third party. But looking at the data and recent polling information, RFK Jr.'s campaign is light years ahead of Marianne Williamson's campaign. And this is before he threw his hat in the ring. Again, there's a bias and a perspective.
See her as a serious threat, then forget it. They're gonna, guns blazing. But right now, like you said,
it's fun for them now. It's drama. It's drama. It's a good story. And then the fact that the New Hampshire Democrats are actually on the record now as saying, like, "Hey, Biden, you're kind of messing up, dog." So this just got real interesting.
Yeah.
And it got real interesting quick. And final point is, guys, it's just Biden and Marianne. Just Biden and Marianne. So that is what you want. You don't want 4 or 5 other candidates who are nominally to Biden's left.
Until RFK Jr. kicked the door and said, "Hey, hold my beer."
Left running, because then you split all those votes among those 5 candidates. It's math.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I don't know, man. It's getting interesting.
That Pete.
Climb.
That New Hampshire poll that had Pete.
She was going after the cat.
Had Pete up. Also had, I think it was 66% of Democrats in New Hampshire saying they did not want Biden to run.
Woo! That's a lot.
It's a lot.
So again, you notice that there's a perspective, that there is a bias here, right? And this is before RFK Jr. started his campaign, made his announcement, and everything else. And of course, they have close connections to Marianne Williamson. But I have to wonder, when push comes to shove, will we ever see Krystal Ball challenge Marianne Williamson in which the same way she challenged RFK Jr.? Will she be as combative? Well, there was a point where she did something like that, but we have to go back in time. Listen,
and Marianne, you made a very
listen very carefully, because this was at one point, and I want to just again just reiterate this for all of you who are watching. When she was still on Rising, Krystal Ball tried to get Marianne Williamson to criticize the Democrats. But again, Marianne Williamson doesn't do that. In fact, Marianne Williamson is all on board of, we got to stop Trump. We have to stop Trump, even though the Democrats committed election fraud in the 2020 primary. Just throwing it out there, folks.
very interesting comment in that little clip that we played from your remarks to the People's Convention. You said, take it from me, I saw it from the inside, what the Democratic Party will do to make sure that they keep their sort of neoliberal grip on power. Can you expand on that a little bit? And did running for president and going through that experience change your view and your relationship to the Democratic Party?
I'll talk to you about that after November 3rd. We all have intellectual and emotional discipline right now. We need to keep our eyes on the ball.
So in other words, during the People's Convention, Krystal Ball, not Krystal Ball, sorry, got them confused, Marianne Williamson, talked about how there is corruption in the Democratic Party. But oh no, you got to bring it up in November. Right now, everybody's got to vote Trump out of office. That's right. This video is from 2020. Way back when. And Marianne Williamson is like, no, doesn't matter. So, gee, if you're a Marianne Williamson supporter and you're worried about election fraud or what the Democrats could possibly do to Marianne Williamson's campaign, similar to what they did to Bernie Sanders, I'm sorry there, my lovelies. Marianne Williamson ain't going to go to bat for you. Again, listen to her answer. Save it for November.
Your view and your relationship to the Democratic Party?
I'll talk to you about that after November 3rd. We all have intellectual and emotional discipline right now. We need to keep our eyes on the ball. We have a clear and present danger in the White House, nothing short of a fascist threat. Nobody's individual story matters. And so, no, I'll be glad to talk about that in the appropriate setting, but
in the appropriate setting. So that means if this election cycle goes the way I think it might, ideally, if there's a long uphill fight in which, again, it's a fight between Biden, RFK Jr., and Marianne Williamson, it is quite clear that Marianne Williamson is going to be indifferent and turn a blind eye, a willing blind eye, towards any type of election fraud that the DNC might do. So there you go. That is something. That's something. It says a lot. But continuing on, because there's more.
I don't want to do anything right now, Krystal, that would in any way contribute to cynicism that might lead people away from the goal, I believe, of replacing this president. We all know what happened. We all know what's happening. Personal anecdotes, personal stories. This is not the moment. I support Joe Biden in becoming president because I want Donald Trump out of the White House. We'll talk all the other stuff later.
But I mean,
we got to stop Trump. We have to stop Trump, everybody. That's the bigger issue. Election fraud? Nah. Election integrity? Nah, whatever. Making sure that my supporters are known that I will fight for them tooth and nail? Bah, indifferent. I don't care. Hey, Marianne Williamson supporters for her 2024 campaign. Heads up. You're in a world for disappointment. Now, to be fair here, I could be wrong. A lot could happen. I mean, let's face it. Time has changed since 2020. But again, if that's her answer then, most likely that's her same answer now.
I mean, you were fairly critical of the Democratic Party in your remarks to the People's Party convention, and some would say even just going there and speaking is kind of a provocative move in a way. It's one I support, by the way. But how do you see that as different from a critique of that process and what you went through? And do you think that it's a sort of distraction or could undermine or feed cynicism when, as you say, people need to just focus on beating Donald Trump?
We have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. The American people are not stupid. I'm all for saying, yes, let's support Joe Biden. Let's get Trump out of the White House. And at the same time, that doesn't mean I'm going to fall in love with or fall in line with some false narrative about how we got to this place, which I think many people realize is simply not true. So
now I wonder, let's have democracy in the chat again. I know. What is democracy, kid? I've never seen it before. Well, here's the thing. I want to hear your thoughts. Do you think that Krystal Ball will ever conduct an interview just as aggressive like that towards Marianne Williamson ever again? A type 3 for yes, because we can expect consistency from breaking points. A type 4 for no. No, that's not going to happen. Again, they're too close together, too intertwined. There's a lot to say in regards towards that interview that Breaking Points did with RFK Jr., not allowing him to speak, interrupting him while he's speaking, holding your own personal biases and perspectives, and trying to conduct a debate with somebody who you're interviewing who's running for the nomination for the Democratic Party of 2024. It really says a lot, adding in your personal biases, interrupting a guest, and not acknowledging their information and their sources. I mean, that's journalism 101. Hell, interviewing 101 is at least respecting your guests and allowing them to speak. That's what you should be doing. And so I wanted to play those two videos, especially with Krystal Ball and Kyle talking about Marianne Williamson and hyping up her campaign. And then, of course, playing that video from 2020, where, again, Marianne Williamson acknowledged that there was something happening during the Democratic primary of 2020, but she used the same talking points that we heard from every single vote blue, no matter who sycophant. We gotta walk and chew gum at the same time. We gotta vote out Trump. Doesn't matter how we got here. We just gotta stop Trump. Trump isn't the end-all, be-all problem to American politics. He's a symptom. He's the rash that there's something wrong. But I have to wonder. I really have to wonder. If Marianne Williamson ever goes on Breaking Points, will there be a back and forth rough interview like we saw with RFK Jr. in Breaking Points? I don't think so. I told you guys that 2024 is going to be an interesting election cycle. Stay tuned to Hard Lens Media to learn more.